My wife always liked compliments, but noticed a pattern: they weren't coming from me anymore. One night, I checked her Instagram DMs. My chest tightened. She was calling another man babe, sending heart emojis, and laughing at his texts. Furious, I confronted her. She rolled her eyes. It's just online, it's not real. I whispered, then you'll love the DM I sent him. Her face turned pale as her phone blew up with notifications. My wife, Sophia, always loved compliments. It was one of the things I admired about her when we first met, how she'd light up at the smallest praise. I used to tell her she was beautiful every single day, sometimes twice a day. I'd leave notes in her purse, send her messages during lunch, whisper sweet things before bed. She always smiled, always thanked me. Somewhere along the way, that changed. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But little things started standing out. If I told her she looked nice, she'd just hum in response. If I said I loved her dress, she'd nod. No smile, no warmth. I told myself maybe she was stressed. Maybe it was work. Maybe I wasn't doing enough. So I tried harder. I complimented her more, surprised her with flowers, made sure to notice little things. Still, the reaction was the same. Indifferent. Unmoved. And then I noticed something. She still loved compliments. Just, not from me. It started with her phone. I caught her smiling at it more than she ever smiled at me. At dinner, she'd be tapping away, giggling at the screen. When I asked, she'd shrug. Just the girls' group chat. I wanted to believe her. But something didn't sit right. One evening, we were getting ready to go out. She spent longer than usual in front of the mirror, fixing her hair, adjusting her dress, making sure everything was perfect. I smiled, watching her. You look incredible, I said. Nothing. Not even a glance. A few seconds later, her phone buzzed on the counter. She picked it up, read something, and smiled. That was the moment. The exact second I knew. It was a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. A soft, pleased, almost shy kind of smile. The kind she used to give me. I felt something tighten in my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I started paying more attention. The late-night phone checks. The sudden laughter when she was texting. The way she'd angle her phone away when I was nearby. Then, there were the little changes in behavior. The new perfume. The way she suddenly cared about how she looked even when just going to the grocery store. The way she kept mentioning someone named Matt from work. I asked her about him once, casually. She barely looked up. Oh, he's just some guy from the office. He's funny, that's all. Funny. I started feeling sick to my stomach. One night, when she was asleep, her phone buzzed. 1:03 a.m. I stared at it. I'd never been the type to go through her stuff. We had always trusted each other. But this was different. Her phone was face up on the nightstand. The screen lit up again. Another message. I reached over. My hand hovered above it for a second before I picked it up. I knew her password. She never changed it. I opened her messages. And my world cracked. A DM from Matt. Good night, babe. Can't wait to see you again. Red heart. My hands went cold. I scrolled up. Flirty messages. Heart emojis. Inside jokes. Her calling him, babe. The messages went back months. Months. Then, the one that made my stomach drop, I wish I could spend the night with you. I set the phone down. Stared at the ceiling. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might shake the bed. I had two options. Wake her up now and confront her immediately. Or, I exhaled. Picked up her phone again. Opened the DM. And sent him a message. Hey, my husband just found these. He's awake. Maybe don't text me for a while. I put the phone back on the nightstand. And I waited. At 3 a.m., she stirred. I turned on the bedside lamp. She blinked, confused. What's wrong? I picked up her phone and held it up. Who's Matt? Her face drained of color so fast I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She sat up slowly. What are you talking about? I scrolled through the messages in front of her, my hand steady. This. Who is he? She swallowed hard. Her hand started shaking. Then, she rolled her eyes. It's not what you think. It's just online. It's not real. I laughed. Short. Cold. Not real. Her phone buzzed. Then again. Then again. Her face twisted in panic. Matt, what? Babe, what's happening? Is he mad? Matt, are you okay? Matt, don't say anything. We'll figure this out. I watched her read them. You were saying. She didn't speak. I stood up, heart still pounding. How long? She shook her head, eyes wide. It doesn't mean anything, how? Long. She pressed her lips together. I let out a breath and ran a hand over my face. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. I turned to her. You didn't hurt me. You chose this. Every day, 4 months. You let another man in. And you kept it going. Tears welled in her eyes. Please. Please, let's talk about this. I picked up my keys. I need time. And I walked out. I didn't even know where I was going. I just drove. It wasn't until I was parked outside a 24-hour diner, staring blankly at the neon open sign, that it hit me. She wasn't sorry she did it. She was sorry she got caught. I sat in that parking lot for hours. The diner's neon sign flickered, casting a dull glow on the rain-slick pavement. My hands were still gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white, heart pounding in my chest like a drum. I replayed the last hour in my head, over and over. Her face when I showed her the messages. The way she rolled her eyes. The way she didn't deny it. I wanted to scream. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I opened Instagram and went to Matt's profile. It wasn't private. His profile picture was a gym selfie, mid-30s, square jaw, that cocky half-smirk. His bio said something about living life to the fullest. Yeah. I bet. I scrolled. A lot of photos from bars, vacations, expensive dinners. A couple of pictures in an office setting, same company as Sophia. My stomach twisted. I clicked on his tagged photos. There it was. A group picture from some office party a month ago. And there she was. Sophia, standing next to him. Close. Too close. His arm draped over her waist, her head tilted toward him. I zoomed in. Her hand was on his chest. I exhaled slowly. This wasn't just online. I closed Instagram and opened my messages. Hovered over my best friend Jason's name. Then, without thinking, I called him. It rang twice before he picked up, his voice groggy. Dude, it's 4 in the morning. I need to talk. He must have heard something in my voice because he didn't hesitate. Where are you? Tommy's Diner. The one off 35. I'll be there in 10. I stared at the empty parking lot, my reflection staring back at me in the windshield. Jason pulled up in exactly 10 minutes, looking half asleep but alert. He slid into the booth across from me, rubbing his face. What's going on? I told him everything. The messages. The late nights. The way she smiled at her phone. He listened, eyes narrowing as I talked. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. Damn. I ran a hand over my face. I don't know what to do, man. You need proof, he said immediately. I frowned. I already have proof. No, you have flirty messages. That's bad, but if you want to know the full story, you need more. I knew what he meant. I didn't want to know. But I did. The next day, I barely spoke to Sophia. She tried to act normal, but I could feel the tension radiating off her. Her eyes were red from crying, but I didn't care. By the afternoon, I made up my mind. I was going to follow her. I waited until she left for errands. 30 minutes later, I got in my car and tailed her. She drove across town, pulling into the parking lot of a small cafe. And there he was. Matt. Sitting at a corner table. Sophia parked, got out, and walked inside. I stayed in my car, heart slamming against my ribs, hands shaking as I watched her lean down to hug him. Not a friendly hug. An intimate one. She sat down, laughing at something he said, tucking her hair behind her ear like she always did when she was nervous or excited. I took out my phone and started recording. The whole conversation was silent from where I was, but the body language was clear. The way she touched his arm. The way he leaned in close. The way her face lit up when he whispered something to her. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. I could walk in there right now. Call her out. Call him out. But I didn't. I just kept recording. I watched them for 30 minutes before she finally got up. They didn't kiss, but the way she looked at him, it was worse. It was the same look she used to give me. She walked back to her car. I watched her drive off. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed Matt instead. He drove straight to an upscale apartment complex across town. Not his office. Not some bar. His home. I parked across the street, watching him disappear inside. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. And then, another thought hit me. What if Sophia wasn't the first? I opened Instagram again. Scrolled through his comments. I started recognizing some of the names. Women. Coworkers. One name in particular stood out. A woman I knew. I clicked on her profile. My stomach dropped. It was my coworker's wife. And then I knew. Matt wasn't just a problem. He was a pattern. I sat in my car, gripping my phone, my mind racing. Sophia had been lying to me for months. That much was clear. But now, I had proof that Matt wasn't just some random guy from work, he had a pattern. And I wasn't the only husband he was betraying. I had a choice. I could walk away, file for divorce quietly, let Sophia and Matt go about their lives without consequence. Or, I could burn it all down. That night, I barely spoke a word to her. I watched her, though. I watched the way she avoided eye contact, the way her hands trembled when she reached for her wine glass at dinner. She knew I wasn't the same. She knew something was coming. The next morning, I made my move. I called Ryan. Ryan was my coworker. A guy I'd grabbed drinks with after work a handful of times, a guy who talked about his wife, Melanie, like she was his whole world. Ryan, whose wife had commented on nearly every one of Matt's Instagram posts. I met him at a quiet diner, just like Jason had met me days before. At first, he was confused why I wanted to talk. But as soon as I slid my phone across the table and showed him the screenshots, the DMs, the comments, the pictures of Matt and Sophia at the cafe, his face darkened. His hands balled into fists. He stared at the screen for a long time, breathing heavily. Melanie said she had a work meeting last night, he said quietly. I didn't have to say anything. He got up, shoving his chair back. I need to go. I grabbed his arm. Wait. Just, think about your next move. His jaw clenched. I'm thinking about it. And with that, he left. I sat back, heart pounding. I had lit the match. Now, I had to wait for the fire. The explosion came that evening. Sophia and I were at home. The kids were playing in the living room when the doorbell rang. She went to answer it, and I watched from the kitchen as her whole body stiffened. It was Ryan. And he wasn't alone. Behind him, Melanie stood, eyes red, face twisted in fury. Sophia turned to me, panic flashing across her face. What's going on? I folded my arms. Why don't you ask Ryan? She looked back at Ryan, who was shaking. Sophia, he said, voice tight, how long have you known Matt? She swallowed. He's a coworker. Melanie let out a cold laugh. A coworker? She shoved her phone in Sophia's face. Explain this, then. Sophia's face drained of color. I stepped forward, voice calm. They've been seeing each other behind our backs, Ryan. Sophia spun to me, eyes wide. You followed me? I tilted my head. Funny. You were fine when I trusted you. When I didn't have to. Ryan's hands were shaking now. Melanie, he said, voice strained, tell me the truth. Were you with him? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Ryan exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Jesus Christ. Then, a new sound. A phone buzzing. Sophia flinched. I looked down at the counter where her phone lay face up. Matt, babe, you okay? Ryan just called me. Silence filled the room. I turned to her slowly. You lied straight to my face. She didn't speak. Then, Melanie did the unthinkable. She grabbed Sophia's phone and called Matt. Speakerphone. It rang. Once. Twice. Then, hey, babe. Are you okay? Melanie smiled coldly. Oh, I think she's just fine, Matt. Dead silence. Then, he hung up. Melanie let out a bitter laugh. Coward. Sophia finally found her voice, stepping toward me. I didn't mean for this to happen, I stepped back. You chose this, I said, voice steady. Every single day, you chose this. Tears ran down her face. Please. I shook my head. I turned to Ryan. I'm sorry, man. He nodded once, jaw tight. Yeah. Me too. He turned to Melanie. You coming? Melanie hesitated. Looked at Sophia. Then at me. No, she said finally. I think I want to talk to him first. Ryan stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed bitterly. Yeah, he muttered. Of course you do. And then he left. Melanie wiped at her face. I need air. She walked out. And then it was just us. Me and Sophia. She took a deep breath. I held up a hand. No, she blinked. You don't get to talk right now. Her shoulders shook as she cried. What do you want me to do? I exhaled. I don't know, I admitted. And then, I grabbed my keys. And walked away. That night, I sat in my car again. But this time, I wasn't lost. I wasn't confused. I was done. A message popped up on my phone. Jason. You good? I thought about it. Then, I typed back, I will be.